Hello everyone, I am Hazel and I will be discussing about the political theory conservatism. So to know the definition and its nature, we will be discussing the meaning first and proceed to the conservatism perceived by three noteworthy persons. So to define conservatism, as you can see in the word itself, has something to do with conserve or synonymous to protect. This definition can be also seen in the derivation of the word itself from its Latin word conservare, which means to protect and or to preserve. Therefore, conservatism is the political theory or the political movement that seek to preserve a range of political aspects, economical aspects, organized religion, government, and property rights that have already been already been tested and already been verified. The beginnings of conservatism as a political theory is typically ascribed to the French Revolution in the year 1789. It was in the reaction of the said revolution. Also, there are theories and concepts that defended the said ideas of hierarchy and community against perceived challenges posed by the capitalist individualism and democracy, and that is called conservatives. So clearly, this political theory refers to the politics, the society, the culture, and etc. that follows the traditional way or favors the traditions that already been tested, that already been verified, usually preserved by the conservatives through their conservative idea. So to fully understand the conservative as a political theory, it is then important to know the context or the factors that led to the occurrence of the said political theory. So the next slide is the context of the conservatism. Liberalism, first, as we all know, was tackled before conservatism. It was mentioned in that liberalism as a political theory that it has a doctrine based on the rights of the individual to liberty that go beyond what was expected, and this was criticized by the conservatism and the conservatives. The conservatism as a political theory then rises and was developed in the critique of liberalism. There were points made by the liberals that was debunked by the conservatives. These points were presented here in your screen. First is that human is intellectually and morally imperfect. Indeed, these points made by the conservatives are made much more sense in our world today. We can see that we always say that there is no such thing as perfect, and human cannot design perfect system. We can see in the first point that we are imperfect, and the second point, we cannot design perfect system. This means that since we are imperfect, we cannot design something we are not capable of, or going beyond what we are capable of. And the third point is that the conservatives are against the sudden changes, and it is because they believe that conservatism only focuses on the tested, the verified, and therefore there is nothing to lose. Kasi in the liberalism, the liberals go beyond what was expected, or going beyond what was the traditional belief, the traditional society. And in that liberalism perspective, we can say that there is a lot to lose kasi hindi pa naman tested and hindi pa naman siya verified. And that is one thing that was debunked by the conservatism. This is true even today. For example, in the products that we buy, or are most of the time those that are already served for years and we always believe that, or most of the time believes that, since they are in the service for years or decades or some sort of that, and so they are trusted, and as it was already time tested and verified through its existence, and that is something similar to what was the conservatism has been pointing out in their third point. There are pillars presented in your screen. The pillars um, or conservatism supports these 6 ideas, namely the tradition, human imperfection, organic society, which was both mentioned, which was mentioned a while ago. Apart from conservatism, support the idea of organic society, property rights, and authority, which all can be derived from the fact that this political theory has a deep connection with the traditions and such. So to move on, the next slide. According to the book that I have read in the JSTOR, there is no universally regarded meaning of conservatism. However, we can define it through the use of noteworthy person who share their views on the conservatism. These are presented here on the screen. Edmund Burke, who is a British statesman, economist, and philosopher. Alexis De Tocqueville, French aristocrat, diplomat, political scientist, political philosopher, and historian. Michael Oakeshott, English philosopher and political theorist. These 3 are not necessarily considered as a conservatives, but they have contributed much in the political theory. So the first one that we will be discussing is Edmund Burke, date 1729 to 1797. Although Burke spent his political life in serving in parliamentary, he was a member of British parliamentary named Whigs Party, which has a school of thought of liberalism. He is, however, remembered as a father of conservatism. This owes to his strong belief in institutions of family and religion, his skepticism toward taxation, and his strong disapproval of bourgeoisie and the French Revolution. The French Revolution made him believe that the defense of traditional society was needed to prevent revolutionary sentiment from spreading throughout the Europe. He believed during that time that only the traditional society needed to be protected by the sentiments of the people after the said revolution, which is the French Revolution. Also, even if he was a member of a liberal party, was mentioned a while ago, he was a member of a British Parliament, which has a political thought of school of thought of liberalism, and was a liberal party. It does not hinder him to share his thoughts on conservatism in most of his major works. And one of this is the Reflection on the Revolution in France, written in 1790. In the said reflection, Burke argued that the French Revolution would end disastrously because its abstract foundation, purportedly rational, ignored the complexities of human nature and society. As I've mentioned, conservatism has supported the idea of traditions and what was the human nature and the society, and that is one of the idea of Burke's pamphlet or his writing, Action on the Revolution in France. It also laid the foundation of the modern conservatism, which is often defined themselves by the opposition to the liberal or labor parties. He dismissed the idea in the revolutionaries' claim of metaphysical human rights, claiming that it was human nature to tend toward hierarchies. And hierarchies, as I've mentioned, it has something to do with conservatism. The same with his Edmund Burke's idea on conservatism has something to do with his belief in the hierarchies and human nature. In the essence, Burke claimed that the society needs to reflect the past, consider the present, and meet the needs of future generation. It is also according to him that one of the fundamental flaws of in the occurrence of the French Revolution is that the people completely ignored the past. And since Burke argued that the society is indeed a contract, not only between those who are living, but between those who are living, those who are dead, and those who are to be born. So to consider this line that he said, we can say that Burke's faith in the past, his admiration of the present, and his opposition to innovation, his small view of human nature, his belief in the traditional outlook of society, and his sympathies with men of property, all of these make him a conservative thinker. So to continue, there are three varieties on the theory presented by Edmund Burke. First one is the status quo. Status quo is defined as the current situation wherein there is nothing to lose by engaging. As I have mentioned, this variety means that the existing societal affairs or current situation that is already tested, that is already verified because they are still present till today. And since it is tested, since it is verified, we have nothing to lose by engaging. The second variety is the organizational conservatism. This variety says a lot on how important the protection is in preserving the traditions and etc. It has something to do with the first variety, which is the status quo. As you can see in the definition in the PowerPoint presentation, the organizational conservatism is the institutional setup that promotes and defends status quo. As I've mentioned, it has something to do, parang kumbaga, it can be considered as the government or the group of people who defend the tradition or what was the status quo. The third variety is the philosophical conservatism. It refers to the construction of a case for the protection and advancement of interest, which means that from the word philosophy, it has something to do with the knowledge and rationality of those who believed in the conservatism as a political theory. So to move on, the second most worthy person who contributed his perspective on conservatism as a political theory is Alexis De Tocqueville. Tocqueville was born 1805 to 1859. He was a French aristocrat, diplomat, political scientist, political philosopher, and historian. He is somewhat similar to that of Burke because both of them are said to which do not considered as between camps. Alexis de Tocqueville shared his thoughts on the liberalism. In fact, it was discussed by the last reporter that the said political theory. So it is difficult talaga to consider him as a conservative because of his liberal ideas. However, we can consider him as someone who shared also his conservative idea, wherein in the prior part of his life, even though he served as a diplomat, it was in the Constituent Assembly he was elected as a conservative Republican. To reiterate what was written in the PowerPoint, his idea is in line with conservatism, revolves around his strong belief in the social order that necessitated the hierarchy through the traditional way, and that only religious belief could offer the moral discipline essential to avoid the plunge into the absence of culture and barbarism. It was mentioned a while ago that conservatism has supported the idea of hierarchy and social order, and that is something that Alexis de Tocqueville believes as well. In addition to what was I've mentioned a while ago, since de Tocqueville was a member of French aristocrat, he was born as noble. His perspective is seen to be similar to the ends of the conservatism. It promotes the traditions, it promotes the traditional social institution, because he himself even admired the ideal of the inherited nobility, because according to him, since he is a member of aristocrat nga, and he was a noble, he believes that being a noble represent honor and excellence, because through it the patronage of art and culture flourish. But lastly, he also believed that the hierarchy of family has something to say with how the government run, and that is the best Tao and devoted to the ideal of the service of others. So to sum up, he believes that since he was a noble, that nobility and the hierarchy of those who will serve in the government is good, because it will always aim for the best and the ideal service for others. However, despite this, he said that with all his ideas in liberalism and these ideas on conservatism, he said that in one of his quotes, he believed that, quote unquote, "My critics insist on making me out to be a partyman, but I am not," because he considered himself as a partisan inquirer and not a partisan of the truth. So to the next slide, we have the last person we will be discussing, which is Michael Oakeshott. He was born 1901 and died on the 1990. He was a professor of political science at London School of Economics. He was known to have a reputation as a traditional conservative. He was skeptical about rationalism and rigid ideologies. Traditionalist conservatives refers to the bonds of social order over the hyper-individualism and the defense of ancestral institution. In political theory, he was known to be traditionalist conservatives, which means that he mostly believes in the social order instead of relying on the individualism. Is also his view on conservatism in political, moral life, and because he criticized also the nationalism. His view on conservatism in political and moral life are basically derived from the criticism of the nationalism. He also view that the traditional style of politics is the only legitimate style of politics, because it emphasized only in every new political activity springs out from it. This means that the traditional style of politics is the only legitimate style of politics according to him. Hence all the next existing style of politics were only derived from the amendment of such traditional style of politics, and it is considered as the implied version. So for him, every activity is therefore traditional in nature. That is where his conservative thought can be seen, as he believed in the support of traditional politics system and such. Also, he was suspicious in the in both change and innovation, and therefore would like to to look twice as claim promised by change. So since he was a since he was skeptical on the change and the promise of change and the innovation, he believes that conservatism has the most rational and the best political theory in its existence. His other ideas were seen in his writing. That of one of that is the essay on being conservative. So it is seen in the next presentation slide. The essay written by Michael Oakeshott, which entitled On Being Conservative, written in 1956. In this said essay, he emphasized that being a conservative is to prefer the familiar to the unknown, the tried to the untried, fact to mystery, the actual to the possible, near to the distant, and the convenient to the perfect, and present laughter to the utopian bliss. And that would end my report. So here I will be leaving you this question: conservatism today. Is it still present today? How do you think so? This is for you to ponder upon and apply what you have learned in the discussion today. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have learned something from the discussion. This is Hazel Lidia signing off.